I grew up in a multi-generational Fisher family, and this is my dad. FisherPoets always reminds me of him. He was a character. My childhood friend said he was a hottie, even at 90. Here we go. David Harold was my dad. He brought my first car, my first horse, and a substantial education in more ways than one. I stood in awe of him as I was growing up. A lifelong resident of the fishing burg, Ilwaco, Washington, he could run a chainsaw like an electric knife, land and gut a giant prehistoric sturgeon, dig his limits of precious razor clams in minutes, and smoke salmon like nobody else. He was handsome and witty with a twinkle in his blue eyes. Even at 90 years of age, he was still a lady charmer. That was fun. My dad was the epitome of the strong, silent type with a boatload of integrity. Like many of his generation, he was given a nickname, Easy. Easy taught his only daughter how to work hard, showed her enough trust to let her play equally as hard. "You go have some fun, Tillicum," he would insist. At the end, I found myself feeding him. He died at the ripe old age of 90 of complications from old age, as he called it. As he put it, "I'm all washed up, Jay." "So am I, Dad. So am I," would answer. "You go have some fun, Tillicum," he would always say right on cue. My dad had his own way of expressing himself in the world, according to David Harold. Dad-isms were always quotable, and they were consistent. About big boobs, if she fell over, she wouldn't skin her nose. About beer guts, look at the bait tank on that guy. About the man who sells roadside art in Chinook, there's that windmill guy, he's always there. He must have a mean wife. About somebody who talks too much, her mouth goes like a goose's ass. About crowds and traffic, I'm like a cat in a bag. I became the family chauffeur, and every time we get ready to take off, he'd quote Jackie Gleason by saying, "And away we go." Flatulence was a favorite topic with my father. When things were good, he was farting in silk. His recliner was his fart sack. And about diarrhea, I can't fart with confidence. Sage advice regarding home repair projects: just keep pecking away at it, Jane. Just keep pecking away at it. Pretty soon it'll all be done. You won't have anything to bitch about. When the river was calm, it was flatter than a snake's ass. Tours were pukers. Family vacations were goddamn safaris. Icy highways were always slicker than snot on a doorknob. And salmon with plum sauce was a terrible thing to do to a fish. He called my horse, "that bovine of yours." Cowboy the Chihuahua was my sidekick. One of my boyfriends was, "that poor bastard." Vegetarian restaurants were seed joints. Patsy Cline was the only woman in history that could sing. About loud rock and roll music, he'd say, "That's a pretty tune." Paying rent was like pouring sand into a rat hole, and I was always busier than a three-peckered billy goat. The smell of gas always makes me nostalgic. I don't mean although Dad was fond of making fart jokes, I mean the gasoline type in this case. As well as commercial fishing, Dad owned the hometown filling station in downtown Ilwaco. As a little girl, he would let me run the hydraulic lift, sit in the cop cars being serviced, and experience the thrill of washing windshields. "You betcha," he would retort when the pukers thanked him. Old Easy was born in 1912 in Ilwaco. Graduated from Ilwaco schools. Lived in Ilwaco his entire life, except for his World War II tour of duty in the South Pacific. And now he's buried next to my mother in Ilwaco. She died in 1978. He was the youngest of 6 children of pioneer residents Roy and Elfrida Colbert Harold. His father and grandfather operated fish traps on the west side of Sand Island in the Columbia River, in an area known as Oklahoma. His mother, of local Chinook Indian descent, was born in a small village off the shores of the Columbia. It's called Chinookville. It's a settlement long since disappeared. Upon his return to Ilwaco, after World War II, he worked with his brother Harlan, oystering in Cougar Bend on Willapa Bay. He met Ava Smallhole of Ashland, Massachusetts, when she was visiting a childhood friend. When she returned home, David Harold traveled cross-country to pursue her. They were married in July of 1948 in Massachusetts, but naturally they returned to Ilwaco. Yeah, that's where I came in. An orphan now, like so many baby boomers. I miss having a dad who was a character and a folk humorist. I'm honored to have been his buddy and his daughter. The first time I picked up the phone to call him after he went to the Happy Hunting Ground was to report that I finally got new brakes on my car. He could stop hounding me every time he saw me. For Christ's sakes, Jane, when are you gonna get that fixed? Ain't nobody gonna do it for you. And away we go.
I've been coming every year since the first year, and John and Doreen are old friends from Southeast, letting in Southeast. And I really missed it last year. I knew I couldn't miss again. This is really my family. It's my chance to feel connected. I love what Sierra just said. It's so true, I think. So I just wanted to say a few things about what I've been hearing over the last couple days, and then read a short poem. Toby's essay just blew me away with this image, the essay he read in here Friday night, with this image of reading poetry over the air at night in the wheelhouse. And I really had that sense. This is my favorite day of FisherPoets, when we're all here in one room and we get to hear each other. And even though it's grown and gotten bigger, and I think that's great, thanks to the hard work of John and Lawrence and everybody who works on it, it's just become such a great sense of community, I think, for all of us. And one of the things I really appreciate is the diversity of voices. And we're hearing that today. Out on the ocean, all men are brothers and sisters. And I tend to be the voice that speaks for the salmon. It's nice to hear more and more people speaking for salmon. And today I thought I would read a poem about the ocean. Years ago, the daughter of a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, she was about 8 years old, and she came up with, I thought, what was a really profound line. She said, "The ocean is our mother and our most fragile daughter." And I think we're starting to see that more, so I'm going to read a poem for the ocean, which is what keeps us all in this profession, and I think is really facing some profound threats right now. I just returned from a couple weeks up at the Friday Harbor Labs. There were marine biologists there coming and doing talks in the evening, and I wrote this poem just a couple weeks ago after one of those talks. It's called 2020. Tonight, the scientist said, almost under his breath, "We are changing the ocean too fast for it to recover." Click to his next slide, his graph predicting when the coral reefs will all be bleached. 1 degree warmer, already the sea more acidic, even with melt from polar ice caps. We squint as the line climbs the stairs, then shoots straight up at 2020, 10 years away, when the coral reefs will fade to gray, like the TV test pattern we watched as kids. No yellow tangs hiding in crevices, no blue parrotfish swaying in the surge. We fall silent and stare as though it is a quiz, and we still can't believe we could fail. So I just want to say I hope we can all work towards the health of the oceans as well, which supports the fish that we catch in our community. Thank you.
You guys are great. It's easy to show up here and stand up and do your thing. It's a whole other thing to organize it. I'm sure it takes a lot of countless hours. I appreciate it. I'm sure the rest of the readers do. I got a story for you called Confessions of a Jonah. And Jonah, of course, is the crew member who shows up and brings nothing but bad luck and trouble. Follow him around. Though I hate to admit it, as a fisherman, I was that Jonah. Though I hid my secret well. I had fished for several seasons and still no one could tell, but my gut told me that I was a hex. I wore bad luck like a coat. For a solid season of jinxing, just hire me on your boat. I first shipped out on the Trapezoid, the lowliner of the fleet, but even she broke records that year for the way that we got beat. Next I signed on to the Stephanie Ann, purseiner of renown, till my second trip aboard when the damn thing went aground. And wasn't I aboard the Billy Joe when she tore her brand new net and we watched our season-making haul slip out of that killer set? It went on like that from year to year till I could deny no more. When the Beth Noel sank on my first trip, I reckon I'd stay on shore. But I didn't want to leave Alaska. In season, it's a lovely place, and running south like a frightened cur would only be a disgrace. It seemed to me I just needed to get away from the blasted sea, and maybe a spell away from the brine would cure my luck for me. But late that night, as I sat in the bar, fogging my brain with drink, I cursed the boats and I cursed the fish. But then I started to think, perhaps it's one and not the other that's causing all my grief. 4 drinks later, I'd refined that theory into a solid belief. It wasn't that boats were my albatross, 'twas the fish that were my bane. If I could just stay away from them on the ships, I could remain. As I sat there, pondering this, I suddenly perked up my ears because the jokers at the bar right next to me were bragging on their careers. These fellows were working the tourist dodge as crew on sightseer ships, not on those monstrous floating cities, but on the smaller guided trips. We poke around and explore, they told me. Our cruise is a different sort. We're all about wild Alaska, not racing from port to port. 3 days later, I was schlepping luggage up the gangway of that boat, humping it into the passenger suites where they'd spend their time afloat. In a week, we'd drop our voyagers off at a company-run chalet. We'd clean up the boat, load a new group, get back underway. Well, it beat hanging out on a slime line and seemed a jolly endeavor. Sailing on deck for the Go West lines on the spirit of whatever. Little I knew, I was in for surprise in a manner most perverse. And only my second week aboard, oh yeah, up jumped my old devil curse. You see, the company had a slogan held out as a guarantee. You'll see a moose when you travel with us, or you'll see Alaska for free. It worked pretty well as a marketing ploy, because the moose were everywhere. But they hadn't counted on my bad luck. We saw neither hide nor hair. At first, the crew had fun with the guests. You'll get your trip at no cost. They always laughed after saying it. They never yet had lost. By the 5th day, we were a ship in distress, because we hadn't seen one yet. And now it was the passengers' turn to laugh. They weren't about to forget. On the 7th day, our guests would depart. That morning would tell our fate. And that's when the captain pulled me aside and gave it to me straight. I want you to jump in this shore boat and head off towards the chalet. I'll tell the guests that we're short on staff and you're helping them today. Now on the point, rounding into that harbor, there's a long, low, grassy field, and there's a little creek on the other side where the boat can be concealed. We'll put an end to our search this morning if you can pull off this gag. Just stash the boat, get out in the field, and put on what's in this bag. Oh yeah. I thought that he was having me on or playing me for a goose, because piled there inside of the bag, the costume of a moose. You gotta be kidding me, I says to him. This'll never play for real. It'll work if you're not too close, says he. Stay a good way across the field. I saw that he was quite serious, and hey, you don't oppose the old man. I swilled down my coffee and jumped in the boat. This was a hell of a plan. But you know, I still felt it was all my fault. My hex had followed me here. If this is what it took to strike it down, hell yeah, I'd volunteer. It It didn't take long to find the right spot. That meadow was bursting with bloom. I tied the boat to a sunken old snag and climbed into that costume. The fireweed and forget-me-not were aglow in the morning sun. And I felt that same glow. I'd purge my curse if I could just get this done. The ship drew in with the rubes out on deck. You could see them all milling about. The cameras were clicking away like mad when I heard somebody shout. I could see them all pointing behind me. So I turned and then went pale. For slowly shuffling out of the woods was a big old bull moose male. His eyes were on me as he ambled out, and I swear I saw him leer. My first thoughts were, is it mating season? Hell's bells, I'd better get clear. My heart was thumping out of my chest as I edged away from him. The boat was 200 yards away. My chance was pretty slim. It was hard to see in that damned old suit. I had no vision astern. But the noises he made as he came on were more than cause for concern. I fought to keep my terror in check, moving off but not too fast. And then I started to pick up the pace, afraid that he'd jump my back. I could hear him get closer and closer, and I'm thinking, I am gone. But as I started standing up to run, I realized I had it wrong. Because instead of a bellow, I heard a voice. And it was that of a man. Back down on all fours, you goddamn fool. You want us both to get canned? Taking no chances. They wanted not one moose, but two. And the time-honored custom of hazing the captain gave me no clue. Yet I couldn't take it. I left Alaska. Never been back there yet. Hey, a panic like I laid on that day ain't so easy to forget. But now, with water under the keel, I think back upon those days. You know, with time, you always remember the good, and the bad burns off in the haze. It's been many years. I miss that life. There's only one thing to do. I know there are skippers out here today. Anyone looking for crew? Thank you.
Over there mentioned that goal decision. I've heard it mentioned several times this weekend. For those who were fishing in Puget Sound or on the Columbia River in the 70s, it was a pretty big deal. And most folks think it was about reallocating fish, you know, changing who caught how many of them and that sort of thing, which of course it was. But the changes made from the kind of management we had before to allocated management wreaked havoc on management overall, and turned to crap basically. And it's been that way ever since, and Alaska is still kind of not part of the impact of that, but the lower 48, everybody was affected. And I was thinking about that a couple of years ago. I wrote a little, just a little poem about how management has changed as a result of the Bolt decision. Actually, what I ended up doing was I realized the poem didn't stand alone. It needed a little preamble. And I wrote a 2-page preamble, which kind of buried the poem. So this is just the poem. I'm not going to make you hear the preamble. And it's called Whatever Happened to Winter Vacations. Once catching fish was what we did. We mended nets with needle and line with fid. We fixed the boat and swabbed the deck. That's what drove our luckless feck. So simple was our life upon the sea, where no one told us how to be. Where set the net or drag the hook was sentence, verse, chapter, book. Where once we resonated to swell of gull, to the slap of wavelet on the hull, to sigh of planks against tide squeaking, to song of wind through rattling rigging. Now we sing the knell of a sick nation, we dance to the throb of litigation. We sing the pencil pushers' tunes, moan the dirge of sport fish boons, and sentence came to have new meaning when rules changed and took new leaning. Competing interests sliced the pie so thin that fisheries began to die. Now we seek our fortunes in courtrooms, prepare our gear, though closure looms, address statistics, quotas, allocations, only daydream of carefree vacations. No longer do we simply go to sea to find the fish and make them be dinners on so many tables, subjects of so many fables. Still, a fish or two get past the paper, and catching them is what we do, to pay the bills and pay the piper, instead of thinking whom to sue. Thank you.
Good morning. If anyone's tried to talk to me this morning, I just want you to know that I don't like to talk in the morning. So, it's nothing personal. Don't try it. I'm not feeling very good. But I feel fine. Gino kind of set the bar a little high when he had pneumonia and he performed a couple years ago, so I'm fine. I wanted to tell you guys about my New Year's resolution. My New Year's resolution is to stand on the bridge of time and shoot arrows of hope into the past and the future. And also, I started jogging. And the reason I'm telling you this is that I feel like FisherPoets is the place that enabled me to make that New Year's resolution. And that's what we do. We illuminate our past. We light the way to the future. It's very good. And I want to thank Florence and John and everyone else. Go ahead, you know. And I also want to encourage you guys to get out to the East Coast if you can. Because John Campbell, I'm extremely fond of the Rhode Islanders. When I first met Amanda and Michael a couple years ago, and John and Marilyn. I'm from the East Coast. I'm actually from upstate New York, just like Clem. And he's my country man. And John's kind of... John, you're full of shit, man. Sorry. I know you take that in the best way, and really what I'm saying is you are my brother. Because he got it pretty good out there. It's pretty nice out there. I was hosted for a week by Amanda and Michael and John and Marilyn. And they took me around and they showed me all this beautiful stuff. And I know they've gotten to show Gino and Dave also. But the reason John Campbell wants to go to Alaska is people here believe you when you say things to them. Because when I first showed up for FisherPoets, and I met John Broderick, and he came up to me and he's like, "Oh, you're Moe Bowstern! We've been wanting to meet you!" And I was like, "Why?" And he goes, "Well, your name, it's so perfect for fishing." And I said, "I made it up." And they all went, "Oh." You know, and like people on the West Coast are like, "Wow, you don't look Jewish." You know, Amanda, the thing you gotta do is forget the mansion tours. Black Island's nice. What you gotta do is go on errands with Amanda. It's awesome. You go in the seafood store, because Amanda gets up at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then she goes out on the lobster boat, and then she comes back in, and then she throws the party with a raw bar. And then she, I don't know, goes to bed, and then she does it again. She's a hard-working woman. You walk in, and the whole time she's doing it, everybody loves her wherever she goes, and that's some hard work. So, for me, it comes easy to her. You go in the bait store with her, she walks in the door, and the guys are like, "It's Amanda, hide the knives!" And then she introduces me to everybody, and you stand there and get chatted up by everybody, and everybody out there's got an ex-wife. I don't know why, they all get married for some reason. So then they look at me and they're like, "Bowstern, huh? What's your real name?" out there. I was like, yeah, no guys with ex-wives. And Campbell was like, oh, man. I was like, John, you got a girlfriend, man. He's like, I know, but he's like, feels it for everybody else. And, which is why he's a sensitive performer, you know? So the other thing that it was really kind of hard for me to be, like John's showing me beautiful Black Islander walking around, I felt bad. And so I started trying to, you know, we're looking down the beach, and I was like, what kind of tide you guys got here? And he's like, oh, you know, 5 or 6 feet. And I was like, oh. And then he looks at me and he goes, what? What do you got in Alaska? I was like, well, you know, on the full moon, 22, 23. I mean, I just saw it because of the biggest tides in the world being in the Bay of Fundy and everything. And then I just accidentally kept saying, like, he'd show me stuff. You know, he showed me the skate egg cases. I was like, oh my God, they're so cute. They're like keychain ones. And he's like, yeah, I know everything in Alaska's bigger. But really, Rhode Island was a lot more fun because it was where I was really recognized as who I was, you know. My people came from Ireland. I'm a Mulvaney. They came over and, you know, we came through Quincy, Mass. And so it was pretty cool to go out there and be recognized and have everybody see me as Irish and see me for, you know, what I was. And out here, people, you know, nobody. We're all just, it's too far away or something. It's kind of like John was saying, they're still pretty connected. But you guys, you gotta get out there. It's pretty awesome, and they're really great hosts. Amanda's an awesome cook. So anyway, about the shooting, you know, that's my New Year's resolution. Arrows of hope into the past and the future. John Broderick, Florence Sage, Jay Speakman, thank you so much for working so hard to keep this the friendly, small thing. I've been to the Elko, Nevada Cowboy Poetry Gathering. We made Ron McDaniel a cowboy poet. I know he's like the cowboy poet and stuff, but that was his first year at the Cowboy Poetry Gathering. And we saw him at his first reading at the Cowboy Poetry Gathering, and me and Joanna were the audience. They have them in these little sectional rooms. Nobody goes to see the poets. It's all about music. And the poets are all reciting. They're reciting poetry other people wrote, which is a fine tradition. And they have, I mean, that's why they kind of look down on people that read off of paper and stuff, but he gets to come here, and I mean, we really, like, he's the cowboy poet because of us. And the not so, like, room, you know?